Gopi Jana Vallabha Harivarda Yashodanandana Prasudana Yashodanandana Prasudana Yamuna Tira Vanachar Yamuna Tira Vanachar Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Iskon Govind ki jai, Shaprapad ki jai, Shishi Godnitai Mai Shishi ki jai, Gaur Premanandi. Reading from Srila Prabhupada's Leela Amrita Introduction. Srila Prabhupada would later recall that on the very night he had actually accepted Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati as his spiritual master, not officially, Prabhupada said, but in my heart, I was thinking that I had met a very nice saintly person. After his first meeting with Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, Abba began to associate more with the Gaudiya Mat devotees. They gave him books and told him the history of their spiritual master, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, was the son of Bhaktivinoda Thakur, another great Vaishnava teacher in the disciplic line from Lord Caitanya. Before the time of Bhaktivinoda, the teachings of Lord Caitanya had been obscured by teachers and sects falsely claiming to be followers of Lord Caitanya. But deviating in various drastic ways from his pure teachings, the good reputation of Vaishnavism had been compromised. Bhaktivinoda Thakur, however, through his prolific writings and through his social position as a high government officer, had re-established the respectability of Vaishnavism. He preached that the teachings of Lord Chaitanya were the highest form of theism and were intended not for a particular sect or religion or nation, but for all the people of the world. He prophesied that Lord Chaitanya's teachings would go worldwide, and he yearned for it. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati was teaching the conclusion of Lord Chaitanya's teachings, that Lord Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and that the chanting of his holy name should be stressed above all other religious practices. In former ages, other methods of attaining to God had been available, but in the present age of Kali, only the chanting of Hare Krishna would be effective. On the authority of scriptures such as Brihad Naradiya Purana and the Upanishads, Bhaktivinoda Thakur and Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati had specifically stressed the importance of the Mahamantra. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Abba knew these scriptural references, he knew the chanting, and he knew the conclusions of the Gita. But now, as he eagerly read the writings of the great acharyas, he had fresh realizations of the scope of Lord Chaitanya's mission. Now he was discovering the depths of his own Vaishnava heritage and its efficacy for bringing about the highest welfare for people in an age destined to be full of troubles. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Jaya Jaya Shri Caitanya Jaya Nityananda
Jaya Jaya Shri Caitanya Jaya Nityananda
Jaya Advaita Chandra Jaya Gora Bhakta Vrinda
Jaya Advaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda
Jaya Jaya Shri Caitanya Jaya Nityananda
Jaya Jaya Shri Caitanya Jaya Nityananda
Jaya Advaita Chandra Jaya Gora Bhakta Vrinda
Jaya Advaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda
Jaya Jaya Shri Caitanya Jaya Nityananda
Jaya Jaya Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda
Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gora Bhakta Vrinda.
Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gora Bhakta Vrinda.
Reading from Sri Chaitanya Charitamrta, Madhya Lila, Chapter 19, Text 17. Okay. Bhattacharya Pandita Bishatrishalana
Bhattacharya Pandita Vishatrishalana
Bhattacharya Pandita Bishatrishalana
Bhattacharya Pandita Vishatrishalana
Bhagavata Vicharakarena Sabate Vasya
Bhagavata Vicharakarena Sabhati Vasya
Bhagavata Vicharakarena Sabate Vasya
Bhagavata Vicharakarena Sabhati Vasya
Bhattacharya Pandita Bishatrishalana
Bhattacharya Pandita Vishatrishalana
Bhagavata Vicharakarena Sabate Vasya
Bhagavata Vicharakarena Sabhati Vasya
Bhattacharya Pandita Vishatrishalana
Bhattacharya Pandita Bishatrishalana
Bhagavata Vicharakarena Sabhate Vishaya
Bhattacharya Vicharakarena Sabate Vasya
Bhattacharya Pandita Vishatrishalana
Bhattacharya Pandita Bishatrishalana
Bhagavata Vicharakarena Sabhate Vishaya
Bhagavata Vicharakarena Sabate Vasya
Bhattacharya Pandita Vishatrishalaya
Bhattacharya Pandita Bishatrishalana
Bhagavata Vicharakarena Sabhate Vasiya
Bhagavata Vicharakarena Sabate Vasya. Ladies. Bhattacharya Pandita Bishatrishalana Bhattacharya Pandita Bishatrishalana Bhagavata Vicharakarena Sabate Vasya Bhagavata Vicharakarena Sabate Vasya Bhattacharya Pandita. Learned scholars known as Bhattacharyas.
Learned scholars known as Bhattacharya.
Bishatrisha. 20 or 30.
20 or 30.
Lina.
Lana.
Taking with him.
Taking away.
Bhagavat Vichar.
Bhagavad Gita.
Discussion of Srimad Bhagavatam.
Discussion of Srimad Bhagavatam.
Karena.
Karena.
Does.
Does.
Sabate Visya.
Sabate Vasya.
Sitting in an assembly.
Sitting in an assembly.
Translation. Sri Sanatana Goswami used to discuss Srimad Bhagavatam in an assembly of 20 or 30 learned Brahmana scholars. Please repeat. Sri Sanatana Goswami used to discuss Srimad Bhagavatam in an assembly of 20 or 30 learned Brahmin scholars. Purport by Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur gives the following commentary on the word Bhagavat Vichar as confirmed in the Mandaka Upanishad 1.145. There are two kinds of educational systems. Dve vidhe viditavya iti ha sma yad brahma vidu vidanti para chaiva para cha tatra para rigvedo yajurveda samavedo tarvaveda shiksha kalpo vyakaranam niruktam chanda jyotisham iti atha para yaya tad aksharam adigamyate. There are two kinds of educational systems. One deals with transcendental knowledge, paravidya, and the other with material knowledge, aparavidya. All the Vedas, the Rig Veda, Yajur Veda, Sama Veda, and Atharva Veda, along with their corollaries, known as Shiksha, Kalpa, Vyakarana, Nirukta, Chanda, and Jyotisha, belong to the inferior system of material knowledge, aparavidya. By paravidya, one can understand the Akshara, Brahman, or the Absolute Truth. As far as the Vedic literature is concerned, the Vedanta Sutra is accepted as the Paravidya. Srimad Bhagavatam is an explanation of that Paravidya. Those who aspire for liberation, mukti or moksha, and introduce themselves as Vedantika are also equal to these groups, aspiring to improve religion, dharma, economic development, artha, and sense gratification, kama. Dharma, artha, kama, and moksha are called chaturvarga. They are all within the system of inferior material knowledge. Any literature giving information about the spiritual world, spiritual life, spiritual identity, and the spirit soul is called paravidya. Srimad Bhagavatam does not have anything to do with the materialistic way of life. It gives transcendental information to educate people in the superior system of Paravidya. Sanatana Goswami was engaged in discussing the Bhagavad Vidya, which means he discussed transcendental superior knowledge. Those who are karmis, jnanis, or yogis are not actually fit to discuss Srimad Bhagavatam. Only Vaishnavas or pure devotees are fit to discuss that literature, as stated in Srimad Bhagavatam itself, 12, 13, 18. Srimad Bhagavatam Puranam Amalam Yad Vaishnavam Priyam Yasmin Paramhamsayam Ekam Amalam Jnanam Param Giyate Yatra Jnana Viraga Bhakti Sahitam Naishkarmyam Avikshritam Tat Shrinvam Supatam Vicharanam Paro Bhaktya Vimuche Naraha. Although Srimad Bhagavatam is counted among the Puranas, it is called the spotless Purana because it does not discuss anything material. It is liked by transcendental Vaishnava devotees. The subject matter found in Srimad Bhagavatam is meant for Paramhamsas. As it is said, Paramo Nimatsaranam Satam Vedyam. A Paramhamsa is one who does not live in the material world and who does not envy others. In Srimad Bhagavatam, devotional service is discussed to arouse the living entity to the transcendental position of jnana, knowledge, and vairagya, renunciation. As stated in Srimad Bhagavatam 1-12, Tat Shradadana Munayo Jnana Vairagya Yuktaya Patyanti Atmani Napashyanti Atmani Chatmanam Bhaktya Shruta Grihitya. The seriously inquisitive student or sage, well equipped with knowledge and detachment, realizes that absolute truth by rendering devotional service in terms of what is heard from the Vedanta Shruti. This is not sentiment. Knowledge and renunciation can be obtained through devotional service, bhaktya shruta grihatya. That is, by arousing one's dormant devotional consciousness, Krishna consciousness. When Krishna consciousness is aroused, it relieves one from fruitive activity for economic improvement and material enjoyment. This relief is technically called Naishkarmya, and when one is relieved, he is no longer interested in working hard for sense gratification. Srimad Bhagavatam is Srila Vyasadev's last mature contribution, and one should read it and hear it in an assembly of realized souls while engaging in devotional service. At such a time, one can be liberated from all material bondage. This was the course taken by Sanatana Goswami, who retired from government service to study Srimad Bhagavatam with learned scholars. Om Jnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshuran Militanyena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dati Swapadantikam Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So Sanatana Goswami used to discuss Srimad Bhagavatam in an assembly of 20 or 30 learned Brahmana scholars. So we're not quite 20 or 30 Brahmana scholars here, but we're nearly there. So Sanatana Goswami, in this chapter, the last verse we read that Sanatana Goswami wanted to retire from service to the Muslim governor, and so he decided to leave the other clerks in charge, other staff, to perform the government service, so that he can actually stay at home and read Srimad Bhagavatam with the Brahmanas. And because Sanatana Goswami realized that Lord Chaitanya's mission was more important, and Lord Chaitanya wanted Rupa and Sanatan to preach and discover holy places and write books on Srimad Bhagavatam. and Vedic literatures. So Sanatana Goswami wanted to retire from the government service. So in this purport, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur is given very lengthy and very detailed understanding of what is superior knowledge, what's inferior knowledge. So, so there's two different types of knowledge. There's Paravidya, which is superior knowledge, and that's what's discussed in Srimad Bhagavatam, Vedanta Sutra. And even the four Vedas are not considered Paravidya, they're not considered transcendental, although we would think the Vedas are. But here the Vedas are grouped amongst Aparavidya, which is material knowledge, because the Vedas are basically giving information or knowledge about how to improve Dharma, Artha, Kama, and Moksha, how to improve these activities. And but the Srimad Bhagavatam is superior because it's rejecting all motivated materialistic religions. So generally, people they work, they go to church, they go to a place of worship, and they worship God for material benefits and fruitive activity, sense gratification. They want to improve their economic development. And then the reason for that is so that they can enjoy their sense gratification. So it all follows the Dharma, is the religious principles, religious activities, and then to improve their economic development, that's the Artha. And why they want that is to improve their sense gratification, which is Kama. And when they get really frustrated that they can't enjoy themselves, then they want moksha, liberation from the suffering condition. But that's also motivated. It's not really, what a devotee doesn't desire. Liberation is impersonal liberation. It's not the goal of life. So we can see here that there's so much in the Vedas, but it's considered here apara. It's not considered transcendental. So if the Vedas are not considered even transcendental knowledge, then what of the material knowledge that people are using in this material world? What people teaching in the universities is completely inferior knowledge. It's materialistic. And so it's not going to benefit the soul. What's going to benefit the soul is spiritual knowledge about spiritual life. Here Prabhupada is describing knowledge of spiritual life, the spiritual soul. These are spiritual world. This is actually knowledge that's going to benefit the soul and help us get free from this material world. So because Krishna is transcendental, then the means or the knowledge to approach him has to also be transcendental. It can't be some material knowledge, because that's not going to be able to help us understand Krishna. So the scriptures are the basis, is the center. Both Guru and Sadhu are they are speaking according to the Shastra. So if the Sadhu and Guru don't speak according to Shastra, then they're not bona fide, because the Shastra is actually the main principle of Shastra, is what we have to abide by. So then, so Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur is actually giving so many nice verses here. Like this verse from the 12th canto is very similar to the verse in the first canto. So the very beginning of Bhagavatam, the second verse from the Bhagavatam, it describes the glories of Srimad Bhagavatam. And in the last few verses of the Bhagavatam also do the same. So the whole Bhagavatam, the 18,000 verses, the very second verse is the glories of Srimad Bhagavatam. And this verse in the 12th canto is like one of the last verses in the whole Bhagavatam. And it's also describing the glories of Srimad Bhagavatam. So the glories of Srimad Bhagavatam is described that in the first canto as Dharma projita kaitavo paramo nimartsana saranam satam vedim vastam atra vastu shivadam trapatai mulanam. So this Dharma Projita is completely rejecting all material activities, materially motivated religion. So Srimad Bhagavatam actually, from the very beginning, is rejecting any materially motivated religion, and it's focusing completely on Paramo, which is the highest truth. And it's understandable by devotees who are Nimatsaranam, which are pure in heart, they're non-envious. And Vastavam Vastu is distinguished as the highest reality from illusion. Shivadam for the welfare of all. So this Bhagavatam is understandable by those who are pure in heart, and it's distinguishing the highest reality from illusion and for the welfare of all. And Tapatray Mulanam, it uproots the threefold miseries. Mahamuni Krite, Kimva Parai Ishvara, Sadhya Vidya Viruddhate. So it's compiled by Vyasadeva, Mahamuni Vyasadeva. And what is the need of any other scripture? Kimva Parai. And Ishvara Sadhya Vidya Viruddhate, the Supreme Lord is established within his heart at once. Prithvi Shushrabi Dakshana, as soon as one attentively and submissively hears Srimad Bhagavatam. So this is the key. Attentively and submissively hearing Srimad Bhagavatam establishes the Supreme Lord within our heart. This is actually the process. So we may be saying that, well, we're hearing Srimad Bhagavatam. Is the process actually working? How do we know if the process is working? How do we know?
How do you know the process is working? You start coming free from the influence of the laws of nature, values.
Yeah. In the Srimad Bhagavatam, this whole set of verses in the very beginning, which describe the process, and one of the verses is Nashta Preshu Abhadrishu, Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttama Shloki Bhakti Bhavati Naishtiki. So by regular attendance in classes on the Bhagavatam and by rendering of service to the pure devotee, all that is troublesome to the heart is almost completely destroyed, and loving service unto the personality of Godhead, who is praised with transcendental songs, is established as an irrevocable fact. So all these desires in our heart that are troubling us will be destroyed to nil. This is the result. So the more we read and hear Srimad Bhagavatam, and if we are doing it attentively and submissively, then this will be the result, that we'll become free from all these unwanted desires that are troubling our heart. They will be destroyed. And we will become free from the lower modes. As soon as irrevocable loving service is established in the heart, the effects of nature's modes of passion and ignorance, such as lust, desire, and hankering, disappear from the heart. Then the devotee is established in goodness, and he becomes completely happy. So the lower modes, passion and ignorance, lust, hankering, desire, all these will disappear from the heart, and one will become established in goodness. One will become completely happy, spiritually happy. There won't be any hankering and lamenting. There will just be a steady devotional service, because as long as our desire, our devotional service is motivated and interrupted, then we're never going to be satisfied. So we have to come to the point of unmotivated devotional service and uninterrupted to completely satisfy the self. So this is what happens when we hear Srimad Bhagavatam in the assembly of devotees. Here we see Sanatana Goswami isn't just reading alone. He's got 20 or 30 Brahmana scholars reading with him, discussing Srimad Bhagavatam. It's not something that you just read as a leisure thing. It's actually to be discussed with devotees, to be understood in a proper way, and submissively and attentively. So Srimad Bhagavatam is not some novel that we read at our leisure and for our pleasure. It's actually we're actually learning about Krishna. We're associating with Krishna, so it should be done attentively and submissively. And so only Vaishnava, Prabhupada says here, like Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur says, that only Vaishnavas are actually fit to discuss Srimad Bhagavatam, because the karmis, jnanis and yogis, they've got other material motivations and they've got other agendas that are not really pure, you know. Karmis, they want to enjoy sense gratification. They want to enjoy the fruits of their activities. Jnanis, they want to, you know, have knowledge, mental speculation. They want to understand things through speculation. And yogis, they want to, you know, become one with the Supreme. They want to emerge into the Brahman effulgence. So these personalities, that they're not satisfied, they have other desires, so they're not really fit to hear Srimad Bhagavatam. And only devotees will actually relish Srimad Bhagavatam, because it's describing the pure knowledge of the Paramhamsas. And this Bhagavatam is actually revealing the means of becoming free from karma and yoga and gyan. So when we hear Srimad Bhagavatam, then knowledge and renunciation will follow. This is actually, there's a nice verse, is Vasudevi Bhagavati Bhakti Yoga Prayojita Jnana Shivaira Jnanatam Yadahoitikam. So as soon as we perform devotional service, then jnana, which is knowledge, and renunciation will follow. So if we have to have knowledge before we can have renunciation, unless we have knowledge, we're not going to be able to renounce things, you know. So that's why knowledge is so important. We need knowledge of how to actually, who is Krishna, who are we, what is the soul, what is this material world, and how to get free from it. So when we have knowledge, then we'll automatically, it'll come, renunciation will come. We'll give up unwanted things. So the karmis and jnanis and vairagi, so they can actually get purified, because when we first come to Krishna consciousness, we have other desires. We are not pure Vaishnavas, so we may think, well, the Srimad Bhagavatam it's only fit for pure Vaishnavas to discuss, so how can I discuss it? But by performing this activity of hearing and reading Srimad Bhagavatam, we will get purified of these anarthas. So similarly, the karmis, those who are performing karma, their desire will get purified, and they will become, so all their work that they do will become, instead of for themselves, they will do it for the pleasure of Krishna. So that's what will happen. If they read Srimad Bhagavatam, hear Srimad Bhagavatam, they will get purified of that desire. And so they'll work for Krishna, for the pleasure of Krishna, instead of for themselves. And those who are renunciants, vairagis, they will, by developing Krishna consciousness, they will come to the stage of indifference to liberation. So instead of desiring liberation, they'll become eager to serve Krishna. And the jnanis, they'll get freed from the conception of total oneness. And so they'll become transformed into thinking that they actually belong to Krishna. So all these personalities can get purified of these tendencies by hearing Srimad Bhagavatam, so they can become pure Vaishnavas. And the Vyasadeva, if we think about Vyasadeva, he's written all these scriptures, the Vedas, the 4 Vedas, he's written the Mahabharata, he's written Vedanta Sutra. So you can see he's written so much knowledge, but still he wasn't satisfied. And he was lamenting that he wasn't feeling satisfied. At that point, his spiritual master Narada Muni came and chastised him and said that you're actually giving so much information in the Vedas, but you're not describing Krishna's glories. So he advised him to write about Krishna's activities, Krishna's pastimes, and that's why Vyasadeva started writing Srimad Bhagavatam. So if Vyasadeva wasn't satisfied by writing all the Vedas and writing everything, and he was only satisfied in his maturity when he wrote Srimad Bhagavatam, then we're never going to be satisfied by all these other things either. We're only going to be satisfied when we actually hear Srimad Bhagavatam. So bhakti is the only means by which we can actually satisfy the mind. We can try other things, but we're never going to be satisfied. And we can take from the example of Vyasadeva himself. He wasn't satisfied with any other activity. He described so many things in the Vedas, but it wasn't. It was all material, and only Srimad Bhagavatam actually describes the transcendental knowledge. And so we may think, well, what is the purpose of hearing? Why do we need to hear Srimad Bhagavatam? What is the reason for it? Why we have this process of hearing and chanting? Why do we need this process?
That's the fraction of vibration.
True, but what? Yes, because the Shravan and the Kirtanam, the next stage is Krishna smiling. So by hearing and chanting, then we come to the point of remembering Lord. Just like in the material world, people are hearing so many mundane things. So all they're thinking of is mundane things. This is the process that, if we hear about something and we talk about something, that's all we're going to think about. So in the spiritual way, the more we hear about Krishna, the more we talk about Krishna, then the more we'll think about Krishna. And Lord Caitanya says that when one thinks of the Lord constantly, love for Krishna manifests within his heart. So that's what we want. We want constantly to think of Krishna, so that then the love will manifest in the heart. We're not going to be able to do that artificially. We have to really be absorbed in hearing and chanting. So the process is to hear, to chant, and then that helps us to remember Krishna. And when we remember Krishna constantly, then love of Krishna will arise in our heart. So this is Lord Chaitanya says that the essence of Srimad Bhagavatam is described in the 4 verses of the seed verses of Srimad Bhagavatam. That is to establish a relationship with Krishna, to perform activities that are related to Krishna, and then to develop pure love for Krishna. So these are the 3 activities that we need. Sambandha, Abhidya, and Prayojana is like the relationship, to understand our relationship with Krishna, to act according to that relationship, and to develop pure love for Krishna. And this only comes about when we constantly thinking of Krishna, and that only comes about by hearing and chanting about Krishna. So this is the process. That's why we need to hear, we need to chant. Otherwise, if we don't know why we're doing it, we're not going to be understanding the goal. We have to have the goal in mind. What is the goal of all this? Is it just some ritual that we're doing, or is it actually, So if we're doing everything with a meaning, then there is impetus to perform it. Otherwise, we'll lose interest. Is there any questions or comments? Yes, Ashish.
There's an online question by Momini. I'll read it out. How can I read Srimad Bhagavatam properly when I'm alone at home?
Join a sangha if you can't have devotees in the house, when online sanghas where we can discuss Srimad Bhagavatam. We can read with other devotees. We can have a group sangha. We can try to establish some group sangha where we can discuss Srimad Bhagavatam and read with other devotees. Is that okay? Or we can hear discussions on Srimad Bhagavatam by other devotees. There's so many lectures on ISKCON Desire Tree. There's lectures on each verse of the Bhagavatam. We can hear those lectures as well, which helps us to understand. But that's one way of doing it, is to have some sort of sangha where we can discuss Srimad Bhagavatam.
There's a certain pattern that some devotees follow in the discussion. Reflect on the reading and everybody participates, and it forces you to really have to hear as well, because you have to speak to everybody else with what you heard, so you're forced to be really attentive and really conscious. So I think when you're doing a Bhagavatam Sangha, that also there should be some system there, so that you can systematically unpack the meaning of the Bhagavad, because there's so much in it, isn't it? When you hear from the acharyas, their comments on it, they make points that you wouldn't know were there just from looking at the verse.
Yeah, there's so much in the verse, so much that we could spend all day on one verse, But it's good to get the other devotees to participate, because they have so many different angles of vision. We can see each verse from a different angle of vision when we get so much input from other devotees, because we only have our own concept or our idea of what it may mean, but other devotees have got their angle of vision. So when we have, if there's 20, here Sanatana Goswami's got 20, 30 brahmanas. So if you can imagine 20, 30 inputs, of knowledge, then it creates a vast amount of knowledge. Whereas if we are just doing it ourselves, it's only limited to ourselves. So limited to what we know. So it really increases our understanding when we hear from so many devotees.
And one of the key verses of the Bhagavad says, we're always discussing with each other about me. So it seems that even more than just hearing and chanting, the Lord's especially pleased to see his devotees discussing about him, and asking, how do you understand that? Like, there's just been one Shiv Ramraj, and it's Narendra Swami, Devi Maharaj, and Shiv Ramraj, and they're trying to understand something that Srila Krishna Chakravarti is saying, kind of looking at from different angles, and then they're also referring to different things that they've read in the scriptures.
Yeah. It's very difficult to understand Krishna on our own, but if we try to understand, we have more and more devotees helping us to understand it, and through Lord Chaitanya's mercy, then we can, it's much easier. Like there's a nice verse which says that difficult things become easy when we remember Lord Chaitanya, and easy things become difficult when we don't remember Lord Chaitanya. So we want to easily understand this, then we have to remember Lord Chaitanya and ask and beg for mercy. And more will be revealed to us through that. And we may say, who's fit for pure devotional service. In the Brihad Bhagavatamrita, there's a nice little part where it says, since Krishna is naturally compassionate to every soul, why doesn't everyone obtain pure devotional service? And there's a Bhakti Shastra's answer that the special mercy of devotional service acts only when a candidate has no interest in karma, jnana, or anything other than bhakti. Only such a person will be receptive to Krishna's special mercy. So we are very fortunate. We are here. We get a chance to hear Srimad Bhagavatam every day. It's especially in Kali Yuga. It's like, So by the mercy of the Lord and his devotees, we can easily come to the point of understanding. Well, we can't understand everything completely, absolutely, because Srimad Bhagavatam is unlimited and Krishna is unlimited, but we can understand to some degree what Krishna wants us to understand, what is here in the Srimad Bhagavatam. And something else I wanted to say. And it says that pure devotees conquer Krishna in 3 ways, because the devotee, he tries to remember Krishna with their body, mind, and words, completely absorbed in Krishna. Then Krishna is also conquered in 3 ways by his pure devotees. And it says, Lord Krishna's body is conquered because he always remains by the side of his pure devotees. Lord Krishna's words are conquered because he always chants the glories of his devotees. And Lord Krishna's mind is conquered because he always thinks about his loving devotees. So in this way, Krishna is conquered in 3 ways too. Just like, we are conquered by Krishna, then he's conquered by us. So this is actually perfection, if we can come to that point, that we can actually remember Krishna and absorb in him through our body, mind, and words, then we can also conquer Krishna in the same way, but with body, mind, and words. So as in the Srimad Bhagavatam in the 10th canto, it describes that. So it's very, very beautiful how Krishna reciprocates with his pure devotees. And another way, if we want to actually gain affinity for hearing, then Srimad Bhagavatam describes that. But there's 2 ways of doing that: is by serving those devotees who are completely free from all vice. Great service is done. By such service, one gains affinity for hearing the messages of Vasudeva. So we want to get this urge to hear the messages, we want this affinity to hear, then we have to serve great Vaishnavas. And by that, then we get the affinity to hear. And then after that, Krishna within the heart, he'll destroy all that is troublesome in our heart. He'll remove all that, this desire to enjoy this material world, these material desires that we have. Krishna will cleanse our heart from these desires, if we hear and chant properly, attentively and submissively. Artha is economic development, and Kama is sense gratification. Not necessarily. Like economic development, people working hard to make money, and then they want to use that money to enjoy their senses. So economic development is to, trying to make money, trying to be well established, whatever it is, to actually enjoy karma. So, is there anything else?
Because he was so busy making money, he didn't get time to eat properly. So he used to just dash down and eat from this really cheap and kind of scanned, like really poor people were going in to eat. I thought it was the nearest thing he could get to. So although he was making loads of money, he was doing very well on amateur, but he wasn't doing very well for karma, because he didn't have the time to actually get any sense gratification. He was so greedy making the money.
Yeah. And so it's a waste of time, isn't it? Shrama eva hi kevalam. Simply a waste of time, because they're spending so much time and energy making the money, and they're not even being happy. They're not even enjoying themselves, even then. So at least if we spend all that time and energy making money to serve Krishna, and Krishna's going to be happy, and we'll end up being happy because of that. We'll get the pleasure because Krishna is pleased.
If you're very proficient with Dharma, Karma, you need to be frustrated, and then we eventually look for moksha, which liberation, because these are the paths are so troublesome that the only result is that you become frustrated and disgusted.
Well, it may take a long time for some people to get to that stage, but eventually people will realize that they're not happy. No matter how much they're trying to enjoy their senses, they're not happy. And eventually they'll become frustrated. And then they'll want liberation to get free from the suffering condition. But that's not actually the goal. The goal is to, it's like a diseased person. They may, the disease may be that they can't eat sweets or something like that. So they stop eating sweets because that's causing them suffering. But the real thing is to have a good diet. The real thing is to get healthy so you can eat the sweets. So the real thing is Krishna's name, form, qualities are very sweet, but because we're in a disease condition, we're thinking it's bitter. Rupa Goswami describes that in Nectar of Instruction, that somebody who's got jaundice, they're diseased, they can't taste anything sweet. But the cure is they have to keep eating sweet things, and eventually it'll become sweet. So the same with us. We've got the jaundice of avidya, of ignorance. So Krishna consciousness may not be so sweet for us because of our jaundice, our disease condition. But the only remedy is that we continue chanting, continue hearing, and eventually we'll get free from that disease condition. So there isn't any other remedy, Yes, please. Well, that is initially we want to do that, but in the process, we'll realize that serving Krishna is so, pleasing Krishna is so much pleasurable that it will come anyway. But it'll be a side benefit. If you see what I mean, liberation is a side benefit. It'll automatically come anyway. So we'll become free from suffering, because the first one is kleshagni, isn't it? We get free from suffering when we perform devotional service, like some material sufferings. So it automatically happens anyway. We don't have to strive for it, you see. So these are like the side benefits. Liberation is like a side benefit from devotional service. It's not the main thing, but it'll come automatically anyway. So by performing devotional service, is not that we're doing that to get... Initially, we'll all have some motivation to performing devotional service. It'll be motivated in the very beginning. We want to get free from suffering, but it's still considered pious. Like Krishna says, there's 4 pious people who turn to him: those who are in need of wealth, those who are suffering in distress, those who are wanting some money, wealth, those who want knowledge of the absolute, those who are inquisitive. So they are motivated, but Krishna says they're still magnanimous because they're turning to me. And eventually they get free from this motivation. Like Dhruva Maharaj, there's so many examples in the Bhagavatam. They were motivated in the beginning, but when in the process of performing devotional service, they realized that, they were searching for pieces of glass, but Krishna is like the diamond, so it'll come,
So in the process, even you can still bona fide to carry on in this process, and just expect that the process these material desires will go.
Yes. Because we've got so many different desires in the heart, but the process will purify us of those desires, so that even if we have those desires, Krishna will fulfill them in such a way that we won't want them again. See? So he'll do it in such a way that we'll get free from that desire for it. We won't want to keep having it again and again. So Krishna is very kind. Sorry? For my personal life, I don't know. It's like Krishna fulfills desires in different ways for different people. Like, one man's food is another man's poison, sort of thing, So, like, what an example? Have you got any examples?
Well, there was Mahaprabhu was saying that I was very attentive to photography, and had all my cameras taken off me during, and then eventually, bit by bit, cameras came, and now I've got so many cameras, and they can't be bothered with them at all. So Krishna took it away because it was a distraction, and then when I was no longer distracted, then he gave me them, but by the time he gave me them, I was that kind of fed up with all You bother with it?
So Krishna knows, he'll give it to us when we don't really need it, when we don't really want it.
So it's just a timing. We'll fulfill our desires.
You talk about that we have to be able to understand things, so sometimes before we can understand something, we have to understand that we can understand it. So how do we understand that we have actually understood it?
Can you answer your own question?
We may think we've understood something, but we may only theoretically accept it.
Well, in the beginning, our knowledge it's like theoretical, but then eventually it'll become realized knowledge. But the process is we have to put it into practice. It's just like we may want to drive a car, and so we have to do all the theory, of how to drive a car, read the highway code book, and learn all the, what we have to press and everything. But unless we sit in the car and actually drive the car, we're not going to get anywhere. We can just theorize it, otherwise it just becomes theoretical knowledge. So if we want to get somewhere in devotional service, we have to put everything in practice. We have to put all we have learned, all the theory into practice, and then it'll become realized knowledge. And then we'll get somewhere. We'll be going somewhere, like, in the car, but it requires us to put everything in practice. There's only so much we can actually, memorize and keep in our head, as a theory. But the more we put it into practice, the more realized it becomes, the more we'll understand things. Has anybody had that experience? Yes.
Mohini has made a comment. She's saying thank you to your question, to your response. And also she's saying, I have lost all desire to read non-devotional books.
That's good. That's a good, that means she's going the right process. The process is working, and she's, all these other desires will just fade away because you're getting a higher taste. When you get a higher taste for Krishna consciousness, all these other things will just fade away. They won't have any, they'll be insignificant. Dharma, artha, kama, moksha will become insignificant when we perform bhakti yoga. So that's how we know we're progressing. Then when all these things will lose their meaning to us, they'll lose their significance. So, thank you very much for attending class. Is there any last comments before I stop? Or questions? Okay. Shri Caitanya Charitamrta ki jai. ISKCON Guruvind ki jai. Shri Prabhupada ki jai. Shri Kodintai Mai Prashishi ki jai. Guru Premanandi.
Priya Devi Dasi ki.
Guru Bhakti.